We arrived at the picturesque ski resort nestled in the snowy mountains, the perfect getaway my husband had planned for us and his friends. The excitement was palpable as we unloaded our luggage from the car, ready to enjoy a week of skiing and relaxation. I couldn't help but marvel at the stunning views, the snow-covered peaks, and the fresh, crisp air. It all seemed so perfect, almost too perfect. The resort was luxurious, with a large cabin that could comfortably accommodate all of us. My husband, always the planner, assigned rooms. I ended up sharing a suite with him, while his friends took the adjacent rooms. It was all so well organized, a testament to his meticulous nature. Little did I know, the real excitement was just beginning. That evening, we gathered in the common area around a roaring fireplace. The atmosphere was warm and jovial, with laughter and chatter filling the room as we sipped on mulled wine. My husband's friends, Mark and Alex, were particularly attentive to me, their flirtatious glances and subtle touches making me feel both excited and uneasy. My husband, oblivious to their behavior, enjoyed their company. Typical, right? He was always so focused on being the perfect host. As the night progressed, the conversation grew bolder, with Mark and Alex sharing stories of their past escapades. I noticed their eyes linger on me longer than necessary, their intentions becoming clearer. I couldn't help but feel a mix of flattery and apprehension. What was I getting myself into? I excused myself to go to bed, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. As I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. My mind raced with thoughts of Mark and Alex, their eyes, their touches, their boldness. Was I really ready for this? Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. It was Mark, asking if he could talk. My heart raced as I let him in, knowing that this conversation was about to take a turn. "Hey," Mark whispered, his voice low and seductive. I couldn't sleep, and I thought maybe we could chat for a bit. I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. "Sure, come in." As he stepped inside, closing the door behind him, the air seemed to crackle with tension. He sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes locked onto mine. "You know," he started, "I've always found you incredibly attractive." My heart pounded in my chest. What was he doing? What was I doing? But I couldn't deny the thrill of the moment, the excitement of the forbidden. "Mark," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "we can't do this." "My husband, your friend." He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my skin. "Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has," he whispered, his hand trailing down my arm. "Let me show you what you've been missing." My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body betrayed me. I leaned into his touch, the thrill of the forbidden overwhelming my senses. We kissed, the intensity of the moment drowning out all rational thought. Just as things were getting heated, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Mark quickly pulled away, leaving me breathless and confused. "Tomorrow night," he whispered before slipping out of the room. I lay back in bed, my heart racing, my mind spinning. What had I just done? What was I about to do? The thrill of the unknown, the excitement of the forbidden, it was all too much. Tomorrow night couldn't come soon enough. Mark's intentions were clear as soon as he stepped into the room. He approached me with a confidence that left no room for doubt. "Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has," he whispered, his eyes locking onto mine. His words sent a shiver down my spine, not just from the chill in the room, but from the unmistakable desire in his gaze. He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my skin. "Let me show you what you've been missing," he said, his hand trailing down my arm. A rush of excitement and fear flooded through me, knowing that this was a line I shouldn't cross. But there I was, teetering on the edge, and for the life of me, I couldn't step back. Despite my reservations, I found myself giving in to his advances. We kissed, the intensity of the moment overwhelming. My mind was screaming at me to stop, but my body had other plans. The temptation was too strong, too intoxicating to resist. And just like that, I was swept away in a wave of forbidden passion. Just as things were getting heated, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Mark quickly pulled away, leaving me breathless and confused. "Tomorrow night," he whispered before slipping out of the room. I collapsed back onto the bed, my heart racing. What had I done? More importantly, what was I going to do? The next day, I couldn't focus on anything but the encounter with Mark. My husband, oblivious to my inner turmoil, suggested we hit the slopes. I agreed, hoping that skiing would distract me. Fat chance. Every swish of my skis, every gust of icy wind just brought back the memory of Mark's touch. On the slopes, I struggled to keep up with my husband and his friends. Mark and Alex were always close by, their presence a constant reminder of what had happened the night before. My mind was a mess, a jumble of guilt, excitement, and anticipation. That evening, we gathered again in the common area. The atmosphere was the same as the night before, but everything felt different to me. Mark's eyes met mine across the room, and I knew that the night was far from over. The anticipation built up inside me as I waited for everyone to retire to their rooms. I couldn't help but feel like I was in some sort of twisted game, a game where the stakes were getting higher and higher. My heart pounded as I glanced at Mark, my thoughts racing. Was this really happening? Was I really about to risk everything for a thrill? But as the night wore on, and the group slowly dispersed, I found myself drawn to the promise of what was to come. The excitement, the danger, the sheer audacity of it all, it was a rush I couldn't resist. And so, I waited, heart pounding, for the knock on the door that I knew would come. As soon as my husband fell asleep, I sneaked out of our room and met Mark in the hallway. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. This was madness, pure and simple, but I couldn't stop myself. Mark led me to a secluded corner of the cabin where Alex was already waiting. Alex's presence surprised me, but the thrill of the situation was undeniable. My pulse quickened as the reality of what was about to happen set in. Mark and Alex exchanged knowing glances before turning their attention to me. "We want to make you feel special," Alex said, his voice low and seductive. Special? More like reckless, but I wasn't about to argue. The intensity of their attention was overwhelming. They took turns kissing and touching me, their hands exploring every inch of my body. I was caught in a whirlwind of sensations, my mind unable to keep up. It was intoxicating, the sheer audacity of it all. Here I was, in the middle of the night, wrapped up in the arms of two men who were supposed to be my husband's friends. Just as things were reaching a fever pitch, we heard a noise from the hallway. Panic shot through me like a bolt of lightning. We quickly separated, our hearts pounding. It was my husband, checking on us. We managed to act casual, and he returned to our room without suspecting anything. Close call? More like a heart attack waiting to happen. The close call only heightened the excitement. After my husband left, Mark and Alex continued their advances, their touches more urgent and demanding. I was completely lost in the moment, swept away by the thrill of it all. The risk, the danger, it was all part of the allure. And let's be honest, I was loving every second of it. We finally parted ways in the early hours of the morning. I slipped back into bed next to my husband, my heart still racing from the night's events. I couldn't believe what I had done, but I couldn't deny the thrill it gave me. The rush of adrenaline, the forbidden nature of our actions, it was all too intoxicating to resist. The next day, I struggled to act normal around my husband and his friends. Mark and Alex were discreet, but their knowing smiles and lingering touches were constant reminders of our secret. Every glance, every brush of their fingers, was a reminder of the line I had crossed and the thrill I couldn't let go of. Throughout the day, I replayed the events of the night in my mind. How had I ended up here? A simple ski trip had turned into a web of deceit and forbidden desire. But there was no turning back now. The secret we shared was like a live wire, electrifying and dangerous. And I was hooked. We spent the day skiing, but my thoughts were elsewhere. Every time I looked at my husband, a pang of guilt shot through me. But then I'd catch Mark or Alex's eye, and the thrill would return, stronger than ever. It was a dangerous game, and I was in too deep. As evening fell and we gathered around the fireplace again, the tension was palpable. My husband, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around him, laughed and chatted with his friends. I, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves and excitement, waiting for the next opportunity to steal away. Mark and Alex's eyes met mine across the room, and I knew that the night was far from over. The anticipation built up inside me as I waited for everyone to retire to their rooms. This was my new reality, a world of secrets and forbidden desires. And as much as it terrified me, I couldn't get enough. As the days went by, my encounters with Mark and Alex became more frequent and intense. They would find ways to steal moments alone with me, each time pushing the boundaries further. A quick kiss in the hallway, a lingering touch during dinner, and those midnight rendezvous that left me breathless. It was as if we were addicted to the thrill, the danger, the sheer audacity of it all. One afternoon, while my husband was out skiing with other friends, Mark and Alex cornered me in the cabin. Their advances were bolder, their intentions clearer. I found myself giving in to their desires, unable to resist. Mark's hands on my waist, Alex's lips on my neck. It was a rush of adrenaline and forbidden pleasure that left me craving more. The thrill of sneaking around behind my husband's back was intoxicating. Every stolen moment with Mark and Alex was a rush of adrenaline, a mix of fear and excitement that I couldn't get enough of. It was like living on the edge of a cliff, always one step away from disaster but unable to turn back. The danger was half the fun, after all. We developed a routine, finding ways to meet without arousing suspicion. Whether it was a quick rendezvous in the hallway or a secret meeting in a secluded part of the cabin, we always found a way. Our secret signals, the knowing glances, the hidden touches. It was like a covert operation, and I was the willing conspirator. It felt like we were in some sort of spy movie, only with way more passion and way less sense. My husband remained oblivious to what was happening. He was busy enjoying the vacation, completely unaware of the betrayal happening right under his nose. The guilt gnawed at me, but the thrill was too strong to resist. Every time I looked at him, I felt a pang of guilt, but then I'd catch Mark's eye or feel Alex's touch, and all my reservations would melt away. Was it wrong? Absolutely. But did it feel unbelievably right? Oh, yes. One night, while my husband was asleep, I sneaked out again to meet Mark and Alex. This time, they led me to a secluded spot outside the cabin. The cold air and the risk of getting caught made the encounter even more exhilarating. The snow crunched under our feet, the moonlight casting eerie shadows around us. It was like something out of a twisted fairy tale, and I was the reckless heroine. The secrecy and the danger only fueled our passion. We were playing a dangerous game, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Each encounter was more intense than the last, the boundaries of our secret affair continually pushed. It was like we were on a runaway train, hurtling towards an inevitable crash, but the ride was just too thrilling to jump off. Back in bed next to my husband, the night's events played over in my mind. The thrill, the excitement, the danger, it was all too much to resist. How long could we keep this up? How long before the whole thing exploded in our faces? But even as I asked myself those questions, I knew the answer. I didn't care. The thrill of the game, the rush of adrenaline, the intoxicating allure of the forbidden, it was all worth the risk. At least, that's what I told myself as I drifted off to sleep, already anticipating the next encounter. Our secret meetings continued, but the strain of hiding the affair started to show. My husband began to notice my distracted behavior and question me about it. He caught me staring off into space more than once, and his concerned eyes would bore into me. "Everything okay?" he asked one evening, his voice laced with genuine worry. I brushed off his concerns, laughing it away as if it was nothing. But the guilt was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, during a group dinner, I noticed my husband watching me closely. He seemed suspicious, his eyes darting between me, Mark, and Alex. The tension was palpable, and I struggled to maintain my composure. Mark and Alex kept their cool, chatting and laughing as usual, but I could feel my husband's eyes on me, scrutinizing my every move. Was I being paranoid, or had he finally picked up on the undercurrent of deceit? After dinner, my husband confronted me. He asked if there was something going on between me and his friends. My heart skipped a beat. I denied it, of course, plastering on my best innocent face. But his suspicion didn't wane. The fear of getting caught was becoming a constant presence, gnawing at the back of my mind like a relentless pest. How long could we keep this up before everything fell apart? Despite the growing tension, I couldn't stay away from Mark and Alex. Our encounters became riskier, the possibility of being discovered only adding to the thrill. We were playing with fire, and it was only a matter of time before we got burned. Every touch, every kiss was a dangerous gamble, and the stakes were getting higher. One night, my husband decided to stay up late, watching TV in the common area. This threw off our routine, and I was unable to meet Mark and Alex. The frustration was palpable, the anticipation building up inside me like a pressure cooker. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind racing with the need for another secret rendezvous. The next day, we went skiing as usual, but the tension was unbearable. My husband was watching me like a hawk, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was onto us. Mark and Alex were equally tense, their usual confidence replaced by nervous glances. Every move felt scrutinized, every word weighed. It was like navigating a minefield, and one wrong step could blow everything to pieces. That evening, my husband announced that he had to leave the resort for a day to handle a work emergency. The relief was immediate, and I knew this was our chance to be together without fear of being caught. As soon as he left, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. The tension dissipated, replaced by an electric anticipation. Finally, we were free to indulge in our secret desires without the constant fear of discovery. The night was ours, and we weren't going to waste a single moment. The thrill of it all, the sheer audacity of our affair, it was a rush I couldn't resist. And as I looked at Mark and Alex, I knew they felt the same. This was our moment, and we were going to make the most of it. As soon as my husband left, Mark and Alex wasted no time. They cornered me in the cabin, their intentions clear. This time, there was no holding back. We gave in to our desires, the intensity of the moment overwhelming. The thrill of being completely alone, without the constant fear of being caught, was exhilarating. It was like a dam breaking, all the pent-up passion and tension flooding out in an unstoppable torrent. We spent the entire day together, exploring every inch of the cabin. The freedom of not having to hide was exhilarating, and we made the most of it. Every touch, every kiss was more passionate than the last. We were like kids in a candy store, indulging in every forbidden delight. The hours flew by in a haze of pleasure and excitement, each moment more intense than the last. The thrill of our affair reached its peak. We were completely consumed by our desires, the outside world forgotten. It was just the three of us, lost in our own world of pleasure and excitement. The boundaries we had pushed for days were now non-existent, and we reveled in the freedom to express our desires openly and fully. As the day turned into night, we knew our time was running out. My husband would be back soon, and we had to return to our roles. The realization brought a sense of urgency, and we made the most of our remaining time together. Every touch, every kiss was tinged with the knowledge that this stolen paradise would soon end. Just before my husband returned, we parted ways, each of us slipping back into our normal routines. The cabin was quiet, the only sound the crackling of the fireplace. The air was thick with the aftermath of our passion. I quickly showered and changed, trying to erase any evidence of what had transpired. The anticipation of my husband's return filled me with a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. The thrill of the affair was intoxicating, but the fear of discovery loomed large. My husband returned, none the wiser to what had happened in his absence. He was tired from his trip and went to bed early. I lay next to him, my mind racing with the events of the day, the contrast between my life with him and my secret affair stark and unsettling. How could something feel so wrong and yet so unbelievably right? The next morning, we resumed our usual activities. My husband seemed more relaxed after his work trip, but I could feel the tension between Mark, Alex, and myself. Our stolen glances and subtle touches were more charged than ever. Every moment spent with them was a reminder of our secret, a deliciously dangerous game that we couldn't stop playing. As the week went on, the routine of skiing and socializing continued, but the dynamic had shifted. I was constantly on edge, fearing that my husband would discover our secret. Mark and Alex were equally cautious, their behavior more discreet but no less intense. Every interaction was a tightrope walk, balancing the thrill of our affair with the ever-present danger of getting caught. One afternoon, while my husband was out with other friends, Mark and Alex cornered me in the ski lodge. They suggested we take a private ski run together, away from the prying eyes of the group. The excitement of the proposition was too much to resist. My heart raced as we made our way to a secluded slope, the fresh snow crunching under our skis. The isolation and the beauty of the landscape only added to the intensity of the moment. We stopped halfway down, hidden from view, and gave in to our desires once again. The thrill of our affair reached new heights. The danger of being discovered, the raw passion of our encounters, and the breathtaking scenery created an unforgettable experience. We knew this was a dangerous game, but we were too deep to stop now. As we lay in the snow, catching our breath, the reality of our situation hit me. This couldn't last forever. The thrill, the passion, it was all too volatile, too explosive. But for now, in this moment, it was all that mattered. And I couldn't bring myself to let it go. As the trip neared its end, my husband suggested a group outing to a nearby village. The idea was to explore and enjoy a change of scenery. Mark, Alex, and I exchanged glances, knowing this would be a test of our ability to maintain our secret. Could we keep up the charade outside the familiar confines of the resort? The village was charming, with quaint shops and cozy cafes. We wandered around, my husband leading the way while Mark and Alex found ways to steal moments with me. A touch here, a whisper there, keeping the flame of our affair alive. It was a delicate dance, balancing the thrill of our secret with the risk of exposure. Each touch sent shivers down my spine, a mix of fear and excitement that was impossible to ignore. We stopped at a local tavern for lunch. My husband was in high spirits, enjoying the company of his friends. Mark and Alex continued their subtle advances, their eyes never leaving mine. The tension was almost unbearable. Every brush of their fingers, every lingering glance was a reminder of the forbidden passion we shared. It was like being caught in a storm, the eye of the hurricane deceptively calm. During lunch, my husband excused himself to take a phone call. Mark and Alex seized the opportunity, their touches becoming bolder under the table. I struggled to maintain my composure, knowing that anyone could notice. My heart raced as their hands explored, the thrill of the forbidden adding to the intensity of the moment. Was this really happening? How far could we push this without being caught? As my husband returned, he announced that we should head back to the resort. The sudden change of plans left us all scrambling. The drive back was filled with a mix of relief and disappointment, knowing that our time together was running out. The tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken desires and unfulfilled promises. We were nearing the end of our stolen moments, and the reality of it was sinking in. That evening, my husband suggested we all have a final nightcap by the fireplace. The atmosphere was relaxed, but the underlying tension between Mark, Alex, and I was palpable. We exchanged knowing glances, the reality of our situation sinking in. This was it, our last night together, and the weight of that realization was almost too much to bear. As the night wore on, I found myself torn between my loyalty to my husband and the thrill of my affair. Mark and Alex continued to push the boundaries, their intentions clear. I knew that this would be our last chance to be together. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls, mirroring the turmoil inside me. Could I really walk away from this? From them? The nightcap turned into a slow, agonizing goodbye. Every touch, every glance was loaded with meaning, a silent promise of what could have been. My husband, blissfully unaware, laughed and joked with his friends, while I battled with the storm raging inside me. The fire's warmth did little to thaw the cold dread settling in my stomach. Finally, as the night drew to a close, we made our way to bed. My husband fell asleep quickly, his steady breathing a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the reality of our situation crashing down on me. This was it, the end of our affair. But even as I told myself it was over, I knew the truth. The flame we had ignited couldn't be extinguished so easily. The real challenge was just beginning. With everyone heading to bed, Mark and Alex suggested one last rendezvous. I hesitated, but the allure was too strong. This was our final opportunity, our last taste of the forbidden. We met in a secluded part of the cabin, the intensity of the moment heightened by the knowledge that this would be our final encounter. My heart pounded as I crept through the dimly lit hallway, the anticipation electrifying. The passion between us was undeniable. We gave in to our desires, the thrill of our secret affair reaching its peak. Every touch, every kiss was filled with urgency and desperation, knowing that this would be our last chance to be together. It was a whirlwind of sensations, a frantic dance of lips and hands, each moment more intense than the last. The fire inside us blazed brighter than ever, fueled by the imminent end of our affair. As the night wore on, the reality of our situation became clearer. We were playing a dangerous game, and it was only a matter of time before we got caught. The fear of discovery added to the intensity of the moment, making it all the more exhilarating. Each creak of the floorboards, each distant sound, sent a jolt of fear through me, but it only heightened the thrill. We were on borrowed time, and every second counted. Just before dawn, we parted ways, each of us returning to our respective rooms. The cabin was quiet, the only sound the crackling of the fireplace. The air was thick with the aftermath of our passion, and I knew that this was the end. As I slipped back into bed next to my husband, the weight of what we had done settled over me. The finality of it all was both a relief and a heartache. The next morning, we prepared to leave the resort. The trip was over, and it was time to return to our normal lives. My husband was none the wiser to what had happened, but I knew that things would never be the same. As I packed my bags, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving a part of myself behind in that cabin. The memories of our affair were etched into my mind, a constant reminder of the line I had crossed. As we drove home, I reflected on the events of the past week. The thrill of the affair, the fear of getting caught, and the intensity of our encounters had left a lasting impression. I knew that I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The landscape outside the car window blurred as my thoughts drifted back to the nights spent with Mark and Alex, the secret moments that now felt like a dream. Back home, life returned to normal. My husband was busy with work, and I struggled to readjust. The memories of the ski trip lingered, a constant reminder of the line I had crossed and the thrill of the forbidden. Every time I looked at my husband, a pang of guilt twisted in my chest, but the allure of those secret encounters was undeniable. It was a chapter of my life that would always remain hidden, a story that would never be told. In the quiet moments, I found myself replaying the events of the trip over and over again. The passion, the danger, the sheer exhilaration of it all, it was intoxicating. But as much as I longed to relive those moments, I knew they were behind me. The affair was over, but the memory of it was a flame that would never fully extinguish. Mark and Alex returned to their lives, but we stayed in touch. The bond we had formed during the ski trip was undeniable, and we found ways to stay connected. The thrill of our affair had created a lasting connection. Late-night texts, secret phone calls, and the occasional clandestine meeting kept the flame alive. It was dangerous and thrilling, but it was also a constant reminder of the line I had crossed. My husband remained oblivious to what had happened. Our relationship continued as usual, but the guilt of my betrayal weighed heavily on me. I couldn't shake the memories of our secret encounters. Every time my husband smiled at me, or reached out to hold my hand, the guilt gnawed at me. It was like a shadow that I couldn't escape, always lurking, always reminding me of my transgressions. One evening, my husband suggested we invite Mark and Alex over for dinner. The idea filled me with a mix of excitement and dread. I knew that seeing them again would bring back all the memories of our affair. My heart raced at the thought, a cocktail of fear and anticipation. How could I face them, knowing what we had shared? And how could I hide the truth from my husband? The dinner was tense, with Mark, Alex, and I exchanging knowing glances. My husband remained unaware, enjoying the company of his friends. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a reminder of the line we had crossed. Each glance, each subtle touch was a spark in the tinderbox of our secret. We were playing with fire, and it was only a matter of time before it consumed us. After dinner, my husband suggested we play a game. The tension between Mark, Alex, and I was palpable, but we played along. The memories of our affair were fresh in my mind, and I struggled to maintain my composure. Every move, every word was a careful dance to avoid suspicion. The thrill of the game was nothing compared to the thrill of our secret, but it was a dangerous dance nonetheless. As the evening wore on, I found myself drawn to Mark and Alex once again. The thrill of our secret affair was too strong to resist. We found ways to steal moments together, the intensity of our connection undeniable. It was like being drawn to a magnet, an irresistible force that pulled us together despite the risks. My husband remained unaware of what was happening. The thrill of our secret affair continued, each encounter more intense than the last. We were playing a dangerous game, but the thrill was too strong to resist. It was like being on a roller coaster, the highs exhilarating, the lows terrifying, but the ride itself addictive. The tension between Mark, Alex, and I continued to grow. Our secret affair had created a bond that was impossible to break. We found ways to stay connected, the thrill of our encounters a constant presence in our lives. It was a double life, a constant juggling act between the normalcy of my marriage and the thrill of the forbidden. As time went on, the memories of our ski trip continued to haunt me. The thrill of our secret affair, the fear of getting caught, and the intensity of our encounters had left a lasting impression. I knew that I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The question was, how long could we keep this up before everything came crashing down? Every day was a test, a delicate balance between the life I knew and the secret I held. The thrill was intoxicating, but the fear was suffocating. It was a game of cat and mouse, and I was caught in the middle, torn between the thrill of the forbidden and the stability of the familiar. But one thing was certain: the line had been crossed, and there was no going back. The question was, what would happen when the truth finally came